I never imagined my daughter would let me sleep on a stained motel mattress while her husband sipped wine in a house I helped her furnish. I never imagined I would be erased from my own family like a name scribbled in pencil, easily smudged, easily forgotten. But what they didn't know was that life still had one final move for me to make. And when I made it, everything changed, not just for them, but for me too. My name is Evelyn Moore. I'm 59 years old, and until last year, I believed in something called unconditional love, especially within a family, especially as a mother. I built my world around it. My husband and I raised our daughter Rachel with everything we had, emotionally, financially, spiritually. Every late-night math project, every homemade meal, every dollar saved from secondhand coupons, it all went toward her future. I thought that was what motherhood was supposed to look like, a quiet, constant giving. When my husband passed from pancreatic cancer, after months of watching him slip away in a hospital bed that never quite felt like home, I told myself at least I still had Rachel. At least I wasn't alone in the world. The house we built together suddenly felt like a ghost town. Every cabinet creaked with memory. Every hallway held his absence. So I sold it. Packed up the life we had poured into that place and moved in with Rachel and her husband Jason, just until I could find my footing again. Just until the fog lifted. But instead of finding comfort in their home, I walked into a wall of polite indifference. Jason barely looked up from his phone the day I arrived. He gave me that kind of smile people wear at funerals, tight-lipped and reluctant. Rachel tried in her way to smooth it over, said he was just stressed with work, said it was temporary, but the truth settled quickly, quietly. I wasn't welcome. I kept to the guest room at the back of the house. I cooked when I could, cleaned without being asked. I offered to pay what I had. I folded laundry that wasn't mine, not to earn my keep, but because that's just what mothers do. We try to stay useful. We try not to take up too much space. Then one evening, over the kind of quiet dinner where the only sound is the hum of a ceiling fan, Jason put down his fork and looked at me. "We're not a charity," he said. "It's time you figured something else out." Rachel didn't argue. She didn't even look at me. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just stood up, walked down the hall, and packed 2 suitcases, everything I had left of my life. And I walked out the door, alone. No one stopped me. But what they didn't know was that they had just made a mistake. If you've ever been cast aside by the people you gave everything to, this story is for you. Subscribe to Real Her Stories, tap the like button, and share your story in the comments. I promise you're not the only one. Let's begin. The motel room felt like a waiting room for the forgotten. The wallpaper peeled in one corner, revealing old glue and older secrets. The microwave blinked the wrong time, constantly. The vending machine outside swallowed my last $2 without apology. Nights stretched long and heavy, the kind where the silence presses in on your chest until your own breathing feels like an interruption. I didn't cry much, not the loud, heaving kind. I didn't have the energy. But there were nights my hands trembled quietly under the thin blanket, and the loneliness felt like a second skin I couldn't shed. I texted Rachel again after the first week, just a heart emoji, no reply. 2 weeks passed, then a month. My motel funds were thinning, my hope with it. I applied for jobs I knew I wouldn't get. I stood in grocery store lobbies trying to smile like I wasn't desperate. I handed out resumes with trembling hands, wearing slacks 2 sizes too big. "We'll call you," they said, and never did. Every time I said the words "recently widowed," I saw the flicker in their eyes, the quick judgment, the quiet dismissal. A woman like me, pushing 60, grieving, out of work, wasn't seen as a candidate. I was seen as a cautionary tale. Some afternoons, I'd sit on the bus just to be around people, not to go anywhere, just to move, to not be still with the echo of Rachel's silence. One evening, after counting coins for a cup of noodle soup and folding my clothes with robotic precision, I pulled out the last box I had packed from my old life. Inside were a few faded photographs, a broken brooch, and a worn leather diary. My mother's. I almost put it aside. I hadn't thought about her in a long time, not since before the cancer took my husband, before Rachel grew up and stopped needing me. But something in the way the leather felt in my hand made me pause. Her handwriting was still the same, looped and patient, the same handwriting that had once signed permission slips and left "I love you" notes in my lunchbox. The first pages were ordinary, recipes, grocery lists, musings about the neighbors. But then the tone shifted. There were entries about a man, always initialed HC, a powerful man, wealthy, married, She never named him fully, but she wrote of stolen hours at hotel rooms, of guilt, and of a little girl born out of both mistake and longing. My heart raced. I reread those passages, each line growing heavier. Then I found it. If anything ever happens to him, he said he's made arrangements. Not official, too dangerous, but he swore Mr. Goldstein would know. He promised Evelyn would never be left with nothing. I blinked. Evelyn. Me. I sat still for a long time. The buzz of the vending machine, the hum of distant traffic, they all blurred into the background as I stared at that name. And that other name, Mr. Goldstein. I didn't have a laptop, but the motel had a shared computer in the office. It took me 2 days and a lot of patience with the slow dial-up connection, but I found him. Leonard Goldstein, retired estate lawyer, still listed with a private firm in Dallas. I didn't call. My hands weren't steady enough. I wrote him a letter, a real one, pen on paper. I explained who I was, who my mother was. I asked if he remembered, if there was something, anything that might connect me to this man she wrote about. I mailed it and told myself not to hope. 2 weeks later, my motel room phone rang. I almost didn't answer. Thought it was a spam call or a wrong number. But when I picked up, the voice on the other end was soft and deliberate. "Is this Evelyn Moore?" I said yes. "This is Leonard Goldstein. I received your letter." My heart stopped. He remembered her, not just her name, but her, the woman, her voice, her laugh. "I always wondered if you'd reach out someday," he said gently. "There's something you need to see." I didn't speak. I couldn't. I just nodded, even though he couldn't see me. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt something crack open in my chest, a shift, a flicker, a beginning. His name was Henry Cartwright, founder of Cartwright Petroleum, a man whose name had graced oil rigs, press conferences, and business sections for decades. I had seen him in newspapers as a child and never thought twice. He was someone else's story, someone else's legacy, until now. Mr. Goldstein handed me a sealed envelope. The paper was yellowed at the edges, the handwriting shaky but still precise. My full name was written on the front, my real name, Evelyn Rose Cartwright. Inside was a letter from Henry himself. He confessed everything, the affair, the guilt, the fact that he had never acknowledged me publicly, not out of a lack of love, but out of cowardice. His image, his marriage, his fortune, they were all built on control, and I had never fit into that picture. But in his final act, he had made sure I would be taken care of. "You are my daughter," the letter read, "and though I failed you in life, I hope to honor you in death. Mr. Goldstein has instructions." The trust was real, quiet, clean, and carefully executed. Just over $1 million. It had been accumulating interest for years. I sat in Mr. Goldstein's office staring at the folder of documents that proved I mattered to someone, that I wasn't disposable, that I wasn't invisible. It wasn't about the money. It was about being seen. I didn't cry, not then. I didn't laugh or ask questions. I just sat there, breathing in a truth that had eluded me my entire life. I had always been someone's secret, but now I was my own story. I didn't call Rachel. I didn't tell her what I had learned or what I now held in my name. Instead, I disappeared on purpose. I rented a small apartment in Dallas and started over. I took online classes. I studied business law, estate planning, real estate investment. I watched hours of YouTube videos about property management and asset protection, not because I wanted to become rich, but because I would never be powerless again. Then, one late evening, scrolling through real estate listings, I found it. A tax-defaulted property listed for auction in East Austin, a modest, aging apartment complex in need of repairs but structurally sound. As I studied the floor plan and tenant list, my breath caught. One of the units, apartment 2B, Rachel and Jason's address. I stared at the screen for a long time. The past and present folded in on each other. And then I acted. With Mr. Goldstein's help, I set up a private LLC. Every paper trail was protected. Every signature clean. I submitted a bid under a trust name. 2 weeks later, the deed was mine. I now owned the building my daughter and her husband lived in. The same building they had once cast me out of without so much as a second glance. I didn't send a notice, not right away. I made updates. Repaired leaking faucets, repainted the stairwell, replaced broken mailboxes. I invested in the building, not out of spite, but because I could. Then I did one thing more. I revised the leases. For every tenant, rates were adjusted gently, fairly, in line with market value, except for one unit, apartment 2B. Their rent tripled. Past due fees were calculated and applied. The next week, I received a voicemail from Rachel. "Mom, I don't know what's going on. Our rent just skyrocketed. Jason's furious. We think it's a mistake. Can you call me?" I didn't return the call. That was the first time she had reached out in months. But now it wasn't about love. It was about crisis, about comfort removed. The woman I had once been, the one who texted "I love you" into a void, who stood outside in the cold with 2 suitcases and nowhere to go, she might have answered. She might have tried to fix it, but I had changed. They had ignored my voice when it was soft and pleading. Now they could feel the weight of that silence. And Jason? He exploded. He sent furious emails to the property manager, called the leasing office demanding to speak to the building owner, left notes under the office door accusing us of fraud, manipulation, and harassment. But he didn't know it was me. He had no idea the woman he'd looked at with such disdain was now the name on his lease, the signature behind his rent. He didn't realize I was no longer sleeping on a motel mattress. I was holding the keys, not out of revenge, but out of clarity. I didn't want to hurt them. I just wanted them to understand what they had done. And for once in my life, I had the means to show them. She came just after dark, the kind of night when the rain doesn't fall, it clings. Rachel stood at my doorstep, soaked through, a paper bag of groceries clutched to her chest like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Her hair was matted, her eyes tired. Not just tired, haunted. "I don't know who I became," she whispered, her voice barely more than breath. "Jason's not who I thought he was. I miss you." I just wanted to feel safe again. I didn't reach for her. I didn't scold her or ask why now. I just stepped aside and let her in. Sometimes silence is safer than words. Sometimes it's louder than an apology. She sat at the kitchen table while I poured us both tea. We didn't speak much that night, but something shifted. Not fully healed, just unstuck. Over the next few weeks, Rachel unraveled and restitched herself. She left Jason for good, moved into a small studio apartment across town, started therapy, began painting again, the kind of wild, colorful art she used to make before she forgot who she was. She even started to laugh again. Quietly at first. Then, one day, freely. Then, one afternoon, she brought me something I hadn't expected to ever see again, my mother's diary. "I found it in my closet," she said, placing it gently on my table like a sacred object. "I read it. I understand now." She didn't say more, and she didn't have to. Her voice carried the weight of generations, of women who kept silent for too long, of love handed down in whispers, of truths buried for the sake of survival. It was time to let go. I sold the building shortly after. Not out of anger, but because I was ready. That chapter had been written. The final page turned. Half the proceeds went to a local shelter for women like me, women who had once stood in the rain with no one to call. I asked them to name the new wing the Eleanor House after my mother, the woman who raised me on nothing but quiet courage, the woman who loved in silence so that I might one day live out loud. The other half? I bought a small cottage in Cedar Park, the very same street where my husband and I built our first home. It's not grand, just a porch swing, 2 bedrooms, and a garden out back. But it's mine. Rachel visits now. We sit outside in the evenings wrapped in blankets, sipping tea and watching the sun slip behind the oaks. We don't talk about Jason. We don't need to. Some stories don't need sequels. They just need closure. And as for me, I've learned that real power doesn't come from slamming doors or proving people wrong. It comes from choosing peace when you've earned the right to rage. It comes from forgiving yourself, even when no one else asks you to. Because sometimes the person we need to forgive most isn't the one who hurt us. It's the one who stayed silent trying to survive them. Thank you for listening. If this story stayed with you, subscribe to Real Her Stories. Leave a comment and let someone else know they're not alone. You never know who needs to hear this next.